Hooday, everybody. Welcome to a very special live episode of the Bengals Pulse. Happy 513 day to everybody. For everybody that celebrates out there, those of us that don't live in Cincinnati, everybody that's ever lived in Cincinnati or wishes that they did celebrates this day with a bowl of Skyline chili and watching some Bengals highlights. How's it going, guys? I'm joined with Justin today and our guy Mon. Jake should be joining us here in a little bit, but what's going on, guys?
Hey Eric, how are you? Jake will be on soon. He's at some meeting, so I'm a little distracted. If you hear some screaming in the background, there's a hockey game on. My daughter's really into the Carolina Hurricanes. They're playing the Rangers right now, and it's pretty tense. And I'm watching it. What's over here? But no, all good. Let's talk Bengals.
Eyes forward, Mon.
It's right, Justin. Glad to have you back, buddy. How are you doing? How's everything going?
Oh, everything's good. Everything's good. Yeah, happy to be here and talk a little more post-draft coverage.
For sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. We're gonna
Absolutely
put our final stamp on this draft. Mon brought it out that we need to talk about not just the Bengals, but we need to grade our opponents out. So for everybody that's joining, that's the goal tonight. We're going to grade the rest of the AFC North after we get through some of this, talking some other Bengals topics here.
Yeah, we want everybody in the chat to also chime in and give us your grades on AFC North. Listen, Bengal fans out there, there's a lot of homers. Jake's a big homer, obviously. We want to be real. If one of our, heated rivals has a good draft, we have to acknowledge it. I think, it's part of the credibility thing. Doesn't mean we're rooting for them, but we have to acknowledge when they draft well. And I think one team in the AFC North really did a good job. 2 solid drafts in a row. I think if they can get their quarterback situation fixed out, I think they're going to be a problem, and that's the Steelers. But we'll get more, we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Let's talk about OTA. Eric, your man Joe Burrow throwing the ball, looking healthy, looking thicker. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get excited about it, but that's what we got right now. It's another year of rehab Joe. And I said this when he got injured, it was a wrist injury. He's going to be in the gym. He's going to be working out. He's going to be growing, getting bigger, getting a more solid foundation. And I think that's what we're seeing. There's some people out there saying he just looks so much bigger and speculating on how much muscle he gained, how much he's gained in his legs. And I'm excited for that because that's going to add durability to his game. Hopefully it doesn't slow him down any, but I think it can never hurt, or you can never go around building that foundation, getting stronger over the offseason. As long as he doesn't have one Popeye arm because he couldn't work out his right arm, I think we should be good. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I heard he's been working out with Mon at Planet Fitness here in Cocoa.
That was a secret. Oh.
That's the big reason for the massive gains in strength and weight. So
that's how he became a monstrosity.
Yep, that's right. Going into Planet Fitness and setting off the lunk alarms.
Mon, you're muted.
Yeah, Mon.
It's all right. They're screaming in the background about the games. I had to mute it. I'm switching locations. I'm not going to the Cocoa Planet Fitness anymore. I'm going to be hitting the one in my town of Titusville. We need to get Planet Fitness as a sponsor because we talk about them every week. But Joe called me and he goes, "What do? You fireman?" And I told him, I gave him the workout routine, and Joe's going to be all right this year. Now, all jokes aside, it made me think about something. A lot of our older listeners, you guys might remember this, but when Phil Simms was first drafted, he was injured a lot. His first 3 or 4 years, he was, hurt and banged up. One off season, he came in and he really bulked up. Phil Simms got bigger and he remained healthy the rest of his career. And Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion. I don't think Phil Simms is a Hall of Famer, is he? I don't think he is.
No,
I don't think he is. No, but he had a very solid career. Hopefully, Joe, with this added working out, adding bulk, hopefully that leads to, let's face it, the way the Bengals play offense, he takes a pounding. And our offensive line is still a work in progress. It's getting better. We got good pieces in place. But he needed that added bulk to protect him from the pounding of an NFL season. I'm glad to see that he's healthy. I guess next month, Eric, he's going to get checked off, full contact. And it's a big unknown because no other NFL quarterback has had a wrist injury like that. But fingers crossed, I think he's going to be okay. He's getting the best of the best medical treatment.
I mean, let's go real old school for any of those out there that ever watched the baseball movie The Rookie. All I'm envisioning is he's going to come out and he's going to be throwing 200 miles an hour because that ligament is going to be stiff and he's got to really whip it out there. And then everybody's going to want that ligament surgery. So they'll call it the blowout.
You're talking about Rookie of the Year.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Henry Roland Gardner.
Henry Rowan Gardner, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was Arnold Schwarzenegger in that movie?
No, John Candy though. John Candy.
I had to throw in something for Jake, because he loves Arnold.
Yeah.
One other player that showed up in OTAs. Let's talk about Trey Hendrickson. A lot of people on Twitter are really happy about it. They talk about Trey potentially holding out, wanting a trade, even potentially retiring. He showed up today and he looked good, and it was the talk of Twitter.
Yeah, and it's not just that. It's our guy Zim is out there throwing all the receipts because it was just the national media making more of it as they always do. I mean, it's not just showing up for workouts; these are voluntary workouts. So he did not have to be there, and he's there, and he said he's going to be here. And I mean, we all knew he had no leverage, but it's nice to see him just show up and show that was probably more so agent talk than anything.
What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I understand where Trey's coming from. I mean, he had a phenomenal season last year, and he watched, several guys who did not produce at the level he did go out and get paid a whole bunch of money. So I get the frustration. I get that he, voiced it a little bit, but glad that that seems to be behind him now. And hopefully they do make some sort of resolution in terms of getting him some money down the road that he deserves. And I think if he goes about the process the way he is, where he is showing up to mini camp, he is showing up to voluntary workouts and what have you, that's gonna put him in a better position to make that argument for getting that extra signing bonus or whatever money that's coming his way, which I'm sure will happen.
Yeah, the Bengals did rework his contract. They added 1 year to it last August, gave him I think $5 to $8 million in new upfront money, but still he did outplay that contract. You're absolutely right. Yeah, there was MVP talk with him, and if you look at TJ Watt and some of these other players, he is comparable to them. They make a lot more money. Will the Bengals revisit it? I doubt it, but they could. Maybe this could be his last year in Cincinnati, even though he's on the books for 2 years. We'll see how it shakes out. He is the best defensive player on this team right now. I'm glad he was in camp today or in OTAs, and it's a good sign. He's a team player, and you're right. It was a little bit of a power play by his agent, and we'll see how it shakes out. We'll see if they maybe add another year, give him some money up front. One other thing, I was watching NFL Network, and they were talking about Justin Jefferson, and they were talking about all the signings of wide receivers. St. Brown, I think, got $32 million a year. They're saying Jefferson could command $40 million a year. $40 million a year. If Justin Jefferson's getting $40 million a year, these are NFL pundits on NFL Network talking about that. Chase is going to want that also, guys. What do you think a Chase contract will look like?
$40 million in one.
40, yeah. It's going to be easy $120 million in guarantees, and it's the Bengals got to prepare for that, and I'm sure they are.
Yeah, and that could play into why we don't see some of these other extensions, and we do see them not giving in fully to David Mulligetta and T's contracts, because every day that we don't get Jefferson or Chase extended, there is another day that those go up. The salary cap keeps going up, and that's just going to keep raising their values and raising that ceiling. I did see some speculation out there that's saying that the wide receiver market it's due for a reset, much like we saw in the running back market a few years ago. I just don't think it's going to happen before Chase and Jefferson get their deal. I think we see them setting the market at 40 million, but then I could easily say that the next closest receiver is only making 30 million a year, but I don't know when that happens. Hopefully sooner than later for the league anyway.
What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, it's the interesting thing that I've seen lately in the last few years is the movement of receivers where we used to see this with running backs. They hit 30 and boom. I mean, teams are looking to get out of deals, not extend guys. I mean, and if you look at statistics over the years, I mean, traditionally that's age 30, that's where running backs really kind of start to hit that wall. There's obviously some notable exceptions, Frank Gore probably being the best in recent years, but yeah, when those guys hit 30, it normally they start to plateau and drop off, and teams have noticed that and stopped extending guys past that age. And now you're starting to see that in the wide receiver position as well. The number of receivers over the age of 30 that were on opening day rosters last year was incredibly low, because that receiver was a position where we saw guys get into 31, 32, 33 years old, and then you start to see the drop off become more noticeable. So it's interesting that receiver seems to kind of be following in line with running back in terms of the longevity of the position, and I wonder if eventually that will start impacting these contracts as well.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting, because I remember at the Combine, Daniel Jeremiah clearly stated 18 of his top 100 players were wide receivers in this upcoming draft. And he said it's going to be a yearly thing. That's just the way college football is now. So you're going to see, we saw it last year, Puka Nacua, Trey Palmer, Tank Dell, all later round picks that came in and produced at Pro Bowl levels. So I think you're right, Eric. I think we might see a little bit of a reset, because teams are going to be able to come in and replenish wide receivers every draft. You're going to see 15 to 25 NFL quality wide receivers get picked in the first 2 to 3 rounds. So it's going to be interesting to see. One other thing, I said this before about T. Higgins. I think the Bengals' best chance to sign T. Higgins was 2 years ago. And I think that's where they needed to make maybe a little bit more aggressive effort then. I think that ship has sailed now. I think he's going to be a Bengal for one more year. Maybe they tag him again and ship him off for a pick. But I just don't see a long-term extension for T. And the only reason I say that, if it's true that Burrow, if Jefferson and the Chases of the world are going to get 40 mil, man, you can't give T 30, because that's what he's going to want.
Yeah.
And I just don't see it happening. I don't. And I love T. Higgins. I really do. But that's going to be interesting to see over the next few months. And let's just get T to come in and play really hard, because I think T. Higgins on the Bengals makes the Bengals a better team.
Yeah, and we saw that with Jesse Bates too. And you kind of wish that maybe the Bengals had a little foresight and could look into that crystal ball. We know that the salary cap is going up every year. They could have had a little bit of foresight, and with Jesse Bates offered him what he was asking for when we had a deal on the table was what less than he actually ended up signing for. So if they would have had foresight with Jesse, we could have done it, and the same thing with T. But they kind of have to evolve and realize that in the guy's third year, offer him a contract, because the salary cap is going to go up so much, so that a high dollar salary in his third year is going to probably be mid-tier when it actually comes up for renegotiation. So they got to be flexible with those things and really put it out there. And then you have to add on the fact that we've got offensive linemen coming up too. So not only, we're going to have Jamar's contract, Joe's contract starts hitting. Well, now we might have to re-sign a couple of these O linemen, or we might have to go retool, because Kappa and Karras, they're nearing their end of the deals as well. And Volson is as much hate as Volson gets, he's going to be coming up on his renegotiation period here soon, and the guy's a monster and hasn't been horrible, and somebody might try and overpay for him. So we got to keep a lot of money in the coffers for those things.
Yeah, salary cap will go up every year, and there's going to be some tough decisions to be made there, and we'll just see how that shakes out. But all right, you want to get to the AFC North draft? You want to start with that?
There's a couple other topics here real quick before we get to the draft. Real quick, just wanted to shout out to everybody that did jump up and were first in line to grab their Bengals Pulse merchandise. We do appreciate it. That sale, the 10% off, is still running through the end of the week. We appreciate everybody's support. Can't wait to start seeing some of those tweets roll in when those shirts are delivered. I think Mon's got a white Pulse coming, so it'd be nice to see that represented as well. So big shout out to everybody who did do that. Appreciate it. And the other thing that's coming down and we're starting to get to see some breaking news out there is the schedule dropping on Wednesday. We got news earlier this week. Actually, I think yesterday it dropped that the Ravens and Chiefs are the home opener. So it's kind of a nice sigh of relief for us Bengals fans to know that we will not be that opening Thursday game against the Chiefs. I think the NFL really wants to save that for later in the year when it's got a lot more drama. Mon, you got some other rumors out there that you've seen on potential Bengals matchups. Can you elaborate on those for us?
Which one did you just mention?
Nothing Bengals related yet. No,
okay. Well, Patriots rumor on the street, that's going to be week 1 opponent at 1:00 at Paycor. And also I did see reputable Bengals source, apparently it was on one of the ticket websites, and they're selling tickets for the Charger game in Los Angeles on, I think, September 29th. So
that was Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, that'd be week 3 or week 4. And so we're looking at the Chargers, potentially week 3 or 4 on the road. Opening game will be against the Patriots, according to Twitter. So take it for what it's worth, guys. I would love that, actually. But we are confirmed Ravens at Kansas City, tough, and Dallas at Cleveland. It's another tough opener right there.
Tom Brady's first announcing gig is in Cleveland. So Cleveland fans, be nice. Or don't.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's Tom
Brady.
What do you think,
Justin?
I say I'm going to go over on 20 signs in the stands in Cleveland that refer to Giselle.
Do you think they spell it right?
Well, he'll be close. I got a good schedule rumor. I heard opening weekend, the London Monarchs will be traveling to Orlando. Stan Gelball versus Scott Mitchell. It'll be fun in the Citrus Bowl.
And Lee Corso is going to be
highlighter yellow jerseys. It'll be great.
And Lee Corso is going to be calling the plays, right, for the Orlando team.
Boy.
Was he not the
Yeah.
Listen,
that was quality football. I remember those days.
It'll take him a half hour to get the play in.
If we're going to talk obscure football, we could start talking about AJ McCarron and the UFL and another run for the championship, but I can't get anybody on board with that yet. So
Lee Corso was the head coach for one of those teams. I remember I went to watch in Orlando a few times.
That was the Renegades, I think. That Corso was the coach of.
We love Corso. Corso is a good dude.
Galen Hall was the coach of the Orlando Thunder, the former University of Florida coach.
Hey, Eric, real quick. Vanguard asked a question. I just want to answer it real quick.
I didn't know if you want to save that at the end or not.
Okay, well, did we do enough in the trenches?
No, go ahead.
Obviously, with Mims and Lee, we only picked – I wanted more interior offensive line help, obviously. I will say this. I think the Bengals are going to use Sample as a Patrick Ricard type of player. I think he's going to be our H-back, fullback, and I think he's going to help out tremendously. And I think the Bengals offense is going to evolve a little bit due to Burrow's injury. I think they are going to run a little bit more. They don't have that 220-pound back, but it's going to be a running back by committee. It's going to be Moss. It's going to be Brown. And I think they'll run the ball more, and I think they'll probably be a little more efficient at it. And I think they'll be ready. Let's put it this way. I expect Kappa and Karras. I do think there was a drop off last year with those two guys. I don't expect that. I expect Kappa and them to play. The year one Kappa with the Bengals was much better than year two Kappa. So let's get the year one guy. And I think if that happens, that'll be a good thing. I do like Trent Brown when he plays and when he's healthy. When he's healthy, he plays very well. So I think there's an upgrade on the right side. I think he's going to be a better player than Jonah Williams. And I expect our left tackle to play a lot better too this year. So I think the offensive line, coaching, full offseason health, we'll see how it goes. Better play calling, a little more commitment to the run. I'm optimistic about it, Vanguard.
Yeah. Can you imagine that jumbo package with Sample at fullback, and we've got Mims out there as the extra offensive lineman?
What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, man, we've got to have one of the biggest tackle rooms in all of football. I mean, you're talking about Orlando Brown, Trent Brown, or both go about 6'8", 350, 360. Mims is a shade under 6'8". He's like 345. So definitely have addressed the offensive line, I think, in a positive manner. I'm with Mon. I think I would have liked another interior offensive lineman, someone who can play guard. While I am a big fan of the Matt Lee pick, and I think that was a great value pick in round 7, and I honestly believe he will have a chance to be the starting center within the next year or two. I would have liked to have seen someone. He's a center all the way. I mean, I do not see him as a guy who can play guard. So having, if they could have got someone who had a little more versatility to play guard or center, or maybe another offensive lineman in the middle rounds who was more of a true guard, I'm with Mon there that I would have liked to have seen that. But overall, I liked what they did on both lines of scrimmage. I've heard so many coaches in the SEC say it. This is a line of scrimmage league. The NFL is the same way. You've got to win the battle up front. If you can't win the battle at the point of attack, it's hard to win a lot of football games. And the Bengals have certainly committed themselves to addressing not only the offensive line, but the defensive line as well.
Oh,
yeah. I just wanted to mention something, Brookie. You brought up a good point about the 220-pound back we had last year. He struggled on third and short. Was it him or was it the offensive line? I remember Ivan Pace really struggled to stop Joe Mixon in that game against the Vikings. Joe Mixon, his strength was plowing over people. I think our problem was interior line play. I remember the podcast with Dan Hort, his podcast, maybe about 4 months ago. He had a specialist on, or NFL insider, and they were talking about 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 in the AFC North. The Bengals converted 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, 3rd and short 59% of the time. All the other AFC North teams were between 75 and 85% conversion rate on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. That's unacceptable. Joe Mixon, if anything, they said he wasn't explosive. Joe Mixon could run over people. But you know what? It's hard to run over people when defensive tackles are blowing your center back 5 yards. And we just can't have that. We can't have that.
It's also different running over a defensive lineman versus running a linebacker or a safety over. That's the difference. When you're hitting that guy that's 300 pounds, it's near impossible to run those over. Now, Justin made me think of one thing. We worry about Matt Lee not being flexible enough to play guard, but there's a solution right there in itself. If we have an issue at guard, say one of them goes down, we've got a viable guy that's talented to play guard. If Matt Lee is the good of a center that they say he is, Matt Lee takes over at center and Ted Karras slides to guard. I mean, we've got a solution right there, and let Karras finish his career out at guard. He could be our backup guard for both sides and center. And now you've got your depth problem solved. What do you think about that?
Yeah, Karras was he played more guard before he came to Cincinnati. And PFF had him rated higher as a guard than center. So yeah, that's an option. There's versatility there with him. Now, would Lee be, with a 7th round pick, would you want him to start right away, or would you want to give him a year?
Well, let's say I say in a year, that's a good transition to have Ted move to backup guard. But if somebody goes down, if one of our guards goes down, what's better to have one of these other guys sliding in there, or put Matt Lee in there and move Ted Karras over to guard? I think that's a better option. It depends what we see how Lee is when he gets out there and how well he learns the system. But
Yeah, well, I guess we'll find out in training camp, especially how they play and see. I mean, we got Cody Ford is still there. They've had practice squad players, interior offensive linemen have been on the practice squad for 2 years. You see it every roster in the NFL have players that have been on the practice squad for years that end up starting many years. Maybe one of these guys can develop into a solid pro. I don't know. What training camp is going to be huge for that battle, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see how that shakes out.
sure. Before we get into the draft grades here, one last question to you. We've got the schedule coming. I think we're all in agreement that we think the Bengals are going to get 5 primetime games, right? Any predictions on who those matchups are and when they are? And
Go ahead, Justin.
we got Justin.
No, go ahead, Mon.
I think there's going to be 4 primetime games. I think the Bengals
Okay.
will have 4, potentially flex out for a 5th. I think the NFL is going to do the right thing. 2 years ago, we had 3 primetime games on the road, all AFC North opponents. They're going to flip the script this year. We're going to have 3 games at Paycor against AFC North teams in primetime. All right. I predict the Kansas City game to be 4:25. I think the Bengals will have at least 3 4 o'clock games, which is considered almost a national game. 80% of the country does see those games. I can see 3 AFC North games, and I'll throw in maybe the Dallas game will be a primetime game.
What do you think about that Black Friday game? That'd be nice.
If they did that, that would be great. There's rumors going around. I don't know if it's just fans wishing. Could be a Christmas game in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I'm not.
I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen.
I'm not a fan of that because we want to drive up for that game, and I don't think we could drive up for a Christmas game. So
so, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, well, that should be dropping on Wednesday. We thought about going live, but it's pretty much going to be dropping right when we would go live. So we'll follow up and give our thoughts on that once it really drops. Probably next Monday or next Wednesday when we're back for another show. So we'll get in from there. We'll get into our AFC North draft grades. I know you guys got a lot of feelings on this. We are a Bengals podcast. We will do our best not to be homers, but just so everybody knows, we are probably the most obscure definition of a homer that has ever existed. We are 4 Bengals fans that have never lived anywhere near Cincinnati, and yet we drive 14 hours both ways or fly and consume everything Bengals related. So there's always going to be that homer aspect, but we'll do our best to give some opinions here. We are going to start. Yeah, we'll try and filter these to the best we can. We are going to start with grading out the offseason champion, Cleveland Browns, as they seem to win the offseason every year and everybody crowns them Super Bowl champs. We'll just go to them first. So we have, make sure I got the Browns on the screen right there. The Browns this year just picked Michael Hall Jr., didn't have a first-round pick. I don't know if that's still the Deshaun Watson remnants coming in there. Michael Hall Jr., defensive tackle out of Ohio State. Zach Zinter was one of Mon's favorite guys. Jamari Thrash, wide receiver, Louisville. Nathaniel Watson, linebacker. Miles Harden, and Juwan Briggs. We will start with Justin. Any guys really jump out at you there as great steals or maybe reaches? And then give us your grade.
So I think it's going to be really interesting to watch Hall because he went a few picks after Chris Jenkins for the Bengals, and they were kind of similarly rated defensive tackles. The difference with Hall is he's a little smaller. He's in like the 285, 290-pound range. Kind of played a little out of position. He was primarily used as a nose guard at Ohio State, but projects as a 3 technique in the NFL. He was more productive as a pass rusher than Chris Jenkins. He had more sacks at the college level. So I think it's going to be kind of interesting to watch what those two do over the next few years. And I think there's going to be a lot of comparisons made. I think the Bengals took the right guy, but I think Hall is a nice player as well. And that, like I said, that's going to be an interesting comparison to watch those two over the next 4 or 5 years. Overall, I thought the Browns probably had the weakest draft in the division. A lot of that was just opportunity. They didn't have a first round pick. They only had 2 picks in the first 4 rounds, so they really didn't have a lot of opportunity to maximize any draft capital. But I will say, I think the one guy that I think is really intriguing is Jamari Thrash, super athletic receiver at Louisville. Had nice production, but had some issues with drops. So he's a guy where if they can sort of mold him into a more complete player, kind of get rid of the hands issues, inconsistency in terms of catching the football, then he could be a really nice deep threat for him. But yeah, on the whole, I didn't think the Browns had a great group. But again, that was a lot of that had to do with the picks they had and trades they've previously made.
Yeah, I agree. They only had 6 picks. I mean, basically going to repeat a lot of the things you said because I agree. Michael Hall's athletic, I think, paired up with Garrett and who's the other offensive lineman they have? The defensive lineman, the pass rusher, I forget his name, but Miles Garrett's generational player. I think Michael Hall getting some snaps with that line, he could be nasty. He's very athletic. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but you're right with that, Justin. We're going to be comparing him to Jenkins quite a bit. Zach Zenter, yeah, you're right, Eric. I did love him. I saw that game where he broke his leg. It was a nasty break, but highly respected, highly thought of. Before that break, he was going to be a second-round pick potentially, and they get him. He's basically going to be a redshirt year for him. He has the potential to add depth to that really good offensive line. They have Joel Bitonio. They have a lot of great players. Wyatt Teller, all pros. The offensive line has always been a strength of the Cleveland Browns. One caveat there, they did lose their offensive line coach. He's at the Titans now. Callahan's probably the best in the NFL, and he left. He's with his son right now, so that's going to be interesting to follow there. Briggs, you talked about the Cincinnati kid. He was a big write-up in the local newspaper in Cincinnati. Everybody thought the Bengals might consider him later in the draft. He ended up going to Cleveland. Watson, he's not the most athletic guy, but he's a thumper. I think he could play well for them. The Browns aren't known for their linebackers. It's that defensive line, that great secondary that they have, come in and make that team. And you're right about Thrash. The Bengals did bring him in for one of the 30 visits. I think the Bengals were interested in him, the wide receiver from Louisville, ended up signing with the Browns. I give him a C, C+. Only 6 picks, not having a first-round pick, that sort of hurts a little bit. And not a lot of quantity there. Bengals had 10 picks. The Browns only had 6. They already have a pretty decent roster. Everything really concerning the Browns is going to be Watson. If Watson can revert back to the Watson from his earlier career with Houston, they're going to be very dangerous. But we saw what they did. They played like 5 quarterbacks last year, and they still made the playoffs. They got a very formidable defense. They got a good roster.
And Justin, what did you give a grade on them?
Yeah, I would say C. I mean, I don't think they, with the lack of picks, the lack of premium picks, I didn't really have an issue with what they did, but there wasn't a lot of opportunity there for them. But yeah, the Zinter pick I think was interesting, and I liked the pick. I think that was a little high in the 3rd round, but yeah, if the leg gets back to 100%, maybe he can get back onto the field late in the 2024 season. Yeah, he could be a really nice 8-10 year cornerstone for them. And while they did lose Callahan, and that is a huge loss, they do still have a ton of offensive line talent, and Zinter just kind of continues to add to that.
Absolutely. You're right. You're absolutely right.
And I didn't get Jake's grade on this, so if he joins us, we'll have him catch us up, and we'll record that as well. For now, let's move on to the Baltimore Ravens. And I just have to make one comment. So I had to search for Ravens, Browns, and Steelers draft picks. And now the algorithms are giving me ads for Steelers, Browns, and Ravens merchandise. And I hate you, Mon, for this episode because I do not know how to defeat that algorithm, and I don't want to see that stuff on my feed ever again.
We wanted to have this episode weeks ago, but then we had the guests come in, so we're sort of the draft
Hey,
analysis has been pushed back. So we got to get this over with. Let's do it.
yeah, for sure. You never turn down Jeff Hobson or Dan Horde or any other special guest that's going to come on. So um, the Steelers, let's see, or sorry, the
Ravens.
Ravens. Ravens took Nate Wiggins, cornerback Clemson, Roger Rosengarten. I know we talked to him a lot about him in our mock drafts. Adisa Isaac, edge out of Penn State. Devontae Walker, wide receiver, North Carolina. TJ Tampa, cornerback, Iowa State. Rasheen Ali, running back, Marshall. Devin Leary, quarterback. Maybe he'll make a play. We can get him in there. Nick Samak, center, Michigan State. And, ooh, that's a good one. Sanasui Kane out of Purdue. We'll go to Mon first on this. Mon, anybody jump out at you and give us your grade?
It's a good draft. One thing about the Ravens, I can't stand them. They know how to draft. They can build a roster. If you know a team, uh, as AFC North fans, as Bengal fans, we follow all the teams in the AFC North, and they have roster turnover constantly. They let a lot of good players leave. Matt Judon left. They can't sign everybody. They end up letting him go and getting and building up some draft capital for future draft picks, and they always replace them with quality players. Wiggins, a little bit on the slight side, smaller side, but many reputable sites had him as the top-rated corner in this whole draft. He's going to pair up with Kyle Hamilton in that defensive backfield. It's going to make that roster a lot better. Rosengarten, a lot of Bengal fans were talking about him later in the draft, second or third round, potentially if the Bengals went wide receiver, tight end in round one. They could get him in round two. We ended up going to the Ravens. A lot of turnover on their offensive line. Kevin Zeitler's not there anymore. They lost a couple other starters from last year, so I expect Rosengarten to start for them this year. Isaacs was a 38th ranked player on PFF. Major value pick for them right there. Devontae Walker, very fast wide receiver at North Carolina, good size, had some drop issues, but they have a pretty loaded wide receiver core group right now, and he's going to come in and contribute. TJ Tampa, somebody that I really considered and wanted the Bengals to consider. He started dropping. He had a slow 40 time. I think that caused his stock to drop. A lot of mocks earlier in the draft process had him as a first rounder or late or early second rounder, late first rounder. He ended up dropping. They got him in the fourth round. Good value pick there. Ali from Marshall, a fast running back. Just a good draft by the Ravens. They know what they're doing. They got a great front office. Pains me to say that, but they know how to restock that roster. And they did lose 3 offensive linemen. It's going to be a transition for them. I expect some lumps there early in the season, but they're good at running the ball and they're good at replenishing the roster.
What do you think, Justin? Oh, Mon, what do you grade him before?
I'll give him an A, solid A.
An A. Ooh.
Yeah. So, it would have been interesting if the Bengals would have went with Byron Murphy in the first round, which, right, we kind of felt like would have been the guy had he been there at 18. I think there's a very good chance that either Rosengarten or Blake Fisher would have been the pick in round 2 for the Bengals. I think so. Yeah. When you look at what the Ravens did, I think Wiggins is a little bit of a gamble because he is on the small side. He's only 173, 175 pounds, but extremely fast and definitely has some strong cover skills. If you can bulk him up a little bit more, get him up into the 180, 185, maybe 190 pound range down the road, that could be a really nice pick for the Ravens. So I think they did gamble a little bit on a guy who fell a little bit, probably because of concerns about his size. But then when you look past that pick, I mean, Rosengarten, I think, was a good value pick. Isaac was a good value pick. I think Walker, he was a guy we were talking about maybe the Bengals grabbing in the third round. And then TJ Tampa, who I really wanted to see end up in Cincinnati when he started to fall like that. I think getting Tampa, who, yes, had a little bit of a slower 40 time, but has really great size, was a projected, a lot of people had him going in the second round. He's a really nice player. I think when you pair Wiggins, maybe a little bit more of a gamble, with a really nice value pick at corner like TJ Tampa, I think the Ravens did a good job there. Rasheen Ali was a great value pick at running back, and Devin Leary is an intriguing player there in round 6. He was a nice quarterback at NC State. He will probably push those quarterbacks on the Baltimore roster in training camp. So overall, yeah, I mean, it's a very typical Ravens draft, a lot of value. They kind of let the draft come to them, and they always make picks that make a lot of sense. I would give it a B+. I would say their draft I felt was very similar in terms of how it looks on paper coming out of Detroit as Cincinnati's in terms of quality.
All right, well, let's move on to the final AFC North team that we
Didn't
dislike.
Jake give you a Pittsburgh Steeler grade? Or we're doing Pittsburgh. We're doing Pittsburgh next. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're on Pittsburgh now. Do you want me to give Jake's first, or do you want to?
No, let's just go ahead and read them off, and then we'll talk about it. We can give him Jake's grade.
Yeah, and it was a lot of people said that the Steelers were highly coveting Mims. So it's nice to hear that we snagged the guy that they want. You never want to see the Bengals pass on someone, the Steelers take him, and then he's playing against you for the next 10 years. Even so, they went with their first pick. They did take Troy Fatano, another guy that was mocked to us a lot. So there is that potential that hopefully we got the right guy and they didn't. But there's a good chance that he's going to be playing there for a long time. In the second round, they took center Zach Frazier. So they went offensive line, 2 straight picks. And then in the third, Roman Wilson, wide receiver, Michigan. Another third-round pick, Peyton Wilson. So they went with Wilson and Wilson. Peyton Wilson, another one we talked about a lot. I don't like seeing the Steelers get a guy like that. Had been said that was one of the best linebackers in the draft. Mason McCormick, guard, in the 4th. Logan Lee, defensive tackle, in the 6th. And Ryan Watts, cornerback, in another 6th-round pick. So we see a lot of offensive line help here for the Steelers. Justin, what do you think about these picks? Any reaches, any home runs?
I mean, I thought they had it's a really good draft on paper. You got probably two starting offensive linemen in Faltanu and Frazier opening day. You got a guy in Mason McCormick who a lot of analysts felt like was kind of that day 3, that round 4, round 5 guy that could surprise. So I think they really did a good job on the offensive line. Roman Wilson was a guy that a lot of people were talking about the Bengals going with in the 3rd round. He's a really nice player. Peyton Wilson, in today's NFL, you need linebackers who can impact all 3 phases of the game. They need to be able to play the run. They can't get caught up in the noise between the tackles. They need to be able to drop and play in coverage. They also need to be able to rush the passer. Wilson showed at NC State he can do all 3 of those things. He's 6'4", he's 235 pounds, he's a phenomenal athlete. The only concern you have with him is the injury history, and it was substantial. The guy is missing an ACL in one of his knees. Of course, Pittsburgh fans will probably tell you there was a wide receiver they took about 20 some years ago who was also missing an ACL in his knee. He worked out pretty well for the Steelers, and that was Hines Ward. So, Logan Lee and Ryan Watts, I thought, were 2 really nice value picks in the 6th round. I remember I think Mon had Logan Lee mocked to us in one of our breakdowns. That's an interesting pick, because I don't really know how he fits in the 3-4, but he was a nice player at Iowa. He's a 280-pound defensive lineman who gives you some versatility up front and decent pass rushing ability at that size. So that's a nice value getting around 6. And then Ryan Watts, you're talking about a corner who's 6'3", 210, big physical corner, maybe is more of a role player at that size. But when I look at what the Steelers did, I thought they got value all throughout the draft with every pick. And it's a nice group. To me, it was a top 5 draft, and I'd say a solid A for me.
How about you, Mom? What do you got?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm looking at their last two drafts. They drafted 5 offensive linemen in the last 2 drafts, and I think 4 defensive linemen. They reinforced their trenches. This Falatanu was one of my favorite players in the draft. I was on the record. I wanted him over Mims. I didn't lose any sleep over it, but I was wanting Falatanu because of his versatility. He could play tackle. He could play guard. That's what the Bengals needed. Zach Frazier was a huge draft crush for me. He's going to be a 10-year starter in this league, and it makes me sick to my stomach that he goes to the Steelers. West Virginia is Steeler country, so everybody in Morgantown in that area is going to be happy that he's playing for the hometown team, which is Pittsburgh. Peyton Wilson, I know you talked about a lot, Justin, reading up on him. I know that knee issue is a little goofy, but super athletic. And if anybody knows anything about linebackers, it's Pittsburgh. I passed over Roman Wilson. There was a lot of talk about the Bengals really considering him, but they ended up going Burton instead of Wilson. They had a chance to sign or to draft Wilson, and they chose Burton. Mason McCormick, somebody I really wanted for that interior offensive line. The Bengals maybe thought they could get him a little later. Ended up going to the Steelers. Logan Lee, you're right, Justin. He's a tweener. Doesn't really fit in, but he's a try-hard guy. I can see him succeeding. Look at last year's picks. They got Broderick Jones, the offensive tackle in the first round from Georgia. Joey Porter Jr. They got Corey Trice, another big cornerback. They're stocking up in the defensive backfield. Keanu Benton, one of my favorite draft picks from last year from Wisconsin. You had no, Keanu Benton was from Arizona State, I believe. Nick Herbig.
He was Wisconsin.
Was he? Okay. Well, the other outside linebacker, reminds me of a rush end. Nick Herbig was from Wisconsin also. He was very similar to T.J. Watt. I think he was pretty productive last year as a rookie. And, of course, Joey Porter, we mentioned him earlier. 2 solid drafts for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Guys, I'm going to tell you, I'm not a Steeler fan, but you got to acknowledge they had a great draft on paper. They're restocking that roster. If they could get that quarterback situation figured out, they're going to be a problem. That would drive Jake crazy. Maybe it's a good episode Jake's not on because he'd have one of these meltdowns right now because he doesn't like the Steelers. But I think the Steelers had a great draft. I'm going to give them an A+. I think they're the best draft in the league.
A+. Ooh, I don't like that. I do love to see that they're worried about getting their quarterback situation figured out, but they brought in Russell Wilson, who's been known to be a bit intense and cause a lot of drama. And then they go and trade for another quarterback. It's one thing bringing in Russell Wilson, who causes some drama in himself, but then you bring in a young quarterback that was highly drafted not too long ago and is still to this day one of the highest scoring fantasy points producers out there. So now you're just ushering in the fact that you're going to get drama. So I do think that they had a really nice draft. I think the quarterback issues might throw a little wrench into their plans. We'll see. Mike Tomlin, for all the dislike we have for him when he beats us, he is one of the better coaches that ever do it. He knows how to get his team motivated and get them playing. I do have Jake's grades for the Steelers picks. He gives them a B, with their best pick being Troy Fatano. And they filled a serious need at tackle after we had taken Mims. He has their worst pick being Zach Frazier out of West Virginia. So not that he doesn't like the player, but I think it was a bit of a reach there in the second. And he thinks they could have got that in the third. So also
Zach Frazier was a solid second round pick, but I hear what he's saying. I think something else about the Steelers, they did not exercise the 5th-year option on Najee Harris. So it was a little bit of a surprise. He's had an uneven career. He's flashed last year, especially against the Bengals, unfortunately. But they have really invested a lot of draft picks on that offensive line. They want to get back to Steeler football, which might be a good thing for the Bengals because that style of football doesn't really translate in the modern NFL that much. But we'll see. I got to acknowledge their solid draft. It was really good, and but it's not to downplay the Bengals. I thought the Bengals had a great draft also.
Yeah, and there's something to be said. AFC North was the first division in what was it 70, 80 years that had all 4 teams with a winning record. All 4 teams almost make the playoffs. these drafts, I don't think they lend themselves to anybody falling back. So it's going to be another dogfight this next season, as long as there's no major injuries or anything like that. Now that we've had a little bit of time to reflect on some of the grades that you guys gave the Bengals and see some of these interviews that the players are doing and some of their OTA work, we have any final thoughts on the Bengals draft and maybe want to change the grade, or what do you think, Mon?
My daughter's screaming. The Carolina Hurricanes have scored 3 goals. I was startled by the screaming. If you're talking OTA interviews, is that what you're saying, Eric?
No, final thoughts on our draft after seeing the
I'm
interviews and
sorry.
OTAs. No, it's okay.
Listen, I'm happy with our draft. When I see these guys talk, it makes me more. I was a little draft night. I wanted Puatano. I just said that a few minutes ago. But watching the Mims interview, seeing him in OTAs, the guy, he's put together well. He doesn't have an Andre Smith kind of body. Somebody you're like, whoa, got to put some work in, get in shape. This guy's already in shape. I think he's going to be a good player. He's just got to stay healthy. Burton clips today with Joe Burrow. He looks fluid. I understand they're in shorts. It's not in pads. I think he's going to be a very good player. The guy I'm really excited about, the more I read about him, I've done research or on YouTube, seen his interviews at TCU, but Newton, the cornerback, he is feisty. I think he's going to make this roster. I think he's going to turn out to be a very, very good player. Matt Lee, a lot of local people I know that root for UCF, they're really excited about him because, he was at UCF before he went to Miami. Justin, you're high on him also. I think hopefully, he can get stronger. He could be our center of the future. But it's a solid draft. We hit a lot of needs. Jenkins is going to be a longtime starter. The defensive end from defensive tackle from Texas A&M, McKinley Jackson, very athletic. Looking at his tape, I think a lot of draft pundits are a little hard and tough on their draft grades. I think he could surprise. He's going to give them 15, 20 snaps a game, and hopefully he'll come in and produce there. I'm happy with the Bengals draft. I gave him a B plus. That grade could obviously go and become an A. But is Jake on? Do we got Jake?
I don't have his video yet, so waiting to see if that comes up.
So I think, yeah. So as you look at Cincinnati's draft, and the word I used coming out of the draft was polarizing, I think was the word I used to describe their draft. And it's really been interesting to read the pundits sort of grade the draft because it's kind of been all over the place. I've seen some, I think Brugler had him like 18th, and then Mon, I can't remember who you sent us, but you sent us a rating, I think, that had the Bengals all the way up in 7th. So I think the prism that you look at the Bengals draft and how you grade it probably indicates what kind of what your feelings are on risk tolerance, because the Bengals really, I think, took on a lot of risk. When you look at, say, the Steelers, they had one kind of risky pick in Peyton Wilson, who was a good value pick, but with his injuries, who knows? He might get 3, 4, 5 good years out of him. Maybe he overcomes the injuries and ends up with a solid 10, 11-year career. The Bengals, when you look at the first 5 picks, really, you're talking about Mims. Is he going to overcome the lack of experience? Chris Jenkins, who's probably our most solid pick. Great pick, great player, but he has these tools, these great physical tools. Can he tap into them to become a much better pass rusher than he was at the college level? Jermaine Burton, tremendously productive, but can he mature a little bit more? Can he get rid of some of the off-field stuff that plagued him at Georgia and Alabama? McKinley Jackson, can he might actually be, honestly, the more I look at it, the safest pick out of that group, because he has a very defined role. It's a little different role than he played at Texas A&M, so that's the only thing with him. But certainly he has to be able to come in and be able to take on the double teams at DJ Reader. was commanding for the last few years. So overall, I still feel about the same. It's a B plus. The Bengals took on a lot of risk in this draft. They definitely are rolling the dice. But overall, it's a very talented group, and I think the ceiling is very high for this group. The problem is there's a very low floor as well. And I think back to was it 2015 where they kind of rolled the dice with Cedric Ogbuehi and Jake Fisher early on, and then PJ Dawson, and they also took 2 tight ends in that draft. And that was a draft where there was a lot of risk. They took on a high level of risk. And when you look back at that draft, it was terrible. But
It was. You're right.
So
PJ Dawson was supposed to be the poor man's perfect. He tested poorly and it just didn't click for him. But what were you saying, Eric? Go ahead.
So excited. You had me so excited talking about taking on the risk. We were all wanting these superstar athletes, these guys that are being game changers, and you're selling me on we're taking risks. To me, that means we're all in. We're taking high ceiling guys, and then you compared them to Ogbuehi and Fisher, and now.
Well, I'm just saying, the Bengals have been down this path before, and it didn't work out. I am optimistic that it will be different this time, but it is. Yeah. It's a very the risk tolerance was very high in this draft, and
you have to acknowledge that we're 1 or 2 players away from the Super Bowl run, and take all the risks right now. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But if it works out, then you just hit it out of the park. So
yeah, and I agree with that. So yeah, again, like I said, I think how you view this Bengals draft really says a lot about your risk tolerance level, and
sure.
And that's why the pundits kind of been all over the place on this class.
Well, Justin, thank you so much. We're hated in Athens, Georgia, and now a lot of fans hate us because you brought up the 2015 draft. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that.
Well, yeah.
You can
but I get you. I didn't add the tight ends. I wanted to add Eric All and Sarah McLaughlin from Arizona.
Sarah McLaughlin.
Whatever. He's Canadian. She's Canadian. Jake brought it up last week. I think we're going to see a switch in the offensive philosophy, drafting 2 tight ends. Sample potentially being that H-back kind of guy. I think this offense, that's the thing that intrigues me the most about the 2024 Bengals. I think Joe's entry forced Zach Taylor, pitcher, and everybody to reevaluate everything. And I think the NFL is going to come out and they're going to see a different Bengal offense. And I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We'll still have that explosive capability, but at the same time, maybe a little bit more ball control. Help out that young defense that's trying to figure out life without DJ Reader. Keep Pat Mahomes, keep all those guys on the sideline, not on the field. I think it's going to be an interesting year.
For sure. So we do have Jake with audio, so we're going to try and bring him in and maybe get his thoughts on at least the Browns and the Ravens. So let's see if we can get him on here. Jake, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you. So,
Jake, I gave the Steelers an A+. Yell at me.
I figured you were going to. Great show so far, guys. Sorry I'm getting here late. Got a spring scrimmage this week, and next week we have our actual spring game. So got a lot of planning to do. But great show so far. And I didn't catch your grades, but I'm sure Mon gave Cleveland an A+, and the Steelers probably an A. No.
Justin bought season tickets for the Steelers.
Yeah, I got a Art Rooney tattoo on my t-shirt.
And he still had change for a 20.
He's got Franco written on his chest. Franco.
Yeah.
We got your. I went ahead and read your Steelers information. You want to give us your thoughts and your grades on the Ravens and the Browns before you start? Justin gave the Browns a C. Mon gave him a C+, and go with the Browns first.
Yeah, again, you guys are going to just think I'm a Browns hater, but I thought I didn't like their draft at all. And again, it's not because it's the Cleveland Browns. It's because I feel like their best draft pick is a guy that they're going to have to redshirt this year. So I love the Zinter pick. I had the Bengals taking him in one of our mocks. I think in round 5. I think they took him pretty early. But again, I'm just not a fan of their draft. And more so than anything, I think you have to look at why their draft was the way it is because of the trade, the Deshaun Watson trade that really is going to end up ruining this football team. And I did not, the Hall pick, yeah, not, I guess, not a reach, not a bad pick. I know we were talking about him at one point for the Bengals, but again, I think their best pick was a guy that's not even going to play this year, but they set themselves up for failure. I gave him a D minus. And again,
the dog pound. It was right on cue with Mon's dog barking. He didn't like that.
I thought you'd give him a G. Like,
I just think this is a team that again had high hopes last year. Without Joe Flacco stepping in, this team is one that probably wins 7 or 8 games. Joe Flacco played out of his mind. Deshaun Watson just he's not the guy. And this team, I know we've all seen it, but what the Houston Texans have taken from the Browns organization is criminal. And again, you saw it this year in the draft. I mean, I don't see where they have helped their football team any way or another. So I gave it a D minus. I don't know what to say. I just think I love the Zinter pick. I think maybe it was a little bit high for a guy that's not playing this year. But I know they got the receiver out of Louisville, but again, I just don't see where they help their team at all. And again, they had some injuries, no doubt about it, but this is a Browns team that just cannot get over the hump, and I don't see them doing it this year. I don't. Again, I know Mon and I will get into that later, I'm sure, about the Cleveland Browns, but I'll be honest with you. I think this team finishes last in the division this year.
All right, so we're all for that, and let's hope that they finish with a record of 3-13, not 9-8. The Ravens.
Listen,
for the
Ravens thoughts. Go Ravens. So, give us your thoughts on the Ravens.
Yeah. So I gave the Ravens a C minus. The Wiggins pick to me just was not. I don't know. I see this team. I see this team needing other positions, and I wasn't a fan of the Wiggins pick. To me, the TJ Tampa pick was better than the Wiggins pick. I think they got really good value with that TJ Tampa pick. But yeah, again, I like the DN, the outside linebacker hybrid guy from Penn State. But again, I don't see where this team has helped themselves in this draft. And again, maybe it's a thing where I'm just not a Wiggins fan, but I didn't like the Wiggins pick at all. I thought it was their worst pick of their draft. So I gave him a C minus. You already read my Steeler one, you said, right?
Yep. Yeah. You want to add any thoughts? Go ahead.
I thought the Steelers had a good draft. The only reason I did not give them higher than a B is because I don't think they hit. This team is starving for skill players on offense. This team cannot score points offensively, and probably lost their most consistent wide receiver. And I'm not sure Roman Wilson is the guy. I don't think he's a number 2 receiver. I just don't see it. So I I like the offensive line picks. Frazier, obviously, tough guy. I know you like him a lot, Mon, and Futana. He was their second choice to Mims, but a good football player. I know we all talked about him as well, but this team is starving for for skill guys, and I don't see where they help themselves at all. I gave him a B. That's pretty good coming from me. I gave him a B.
Mon, you're muted.
again. Mon, you're muted.
Good points. I'm sorry. There's a lot of screaming. The Panthers are winning 4-1, and I had to mute it because
Hurricanes. The Hurricanes.
Hurricanes,
yeah, the Hurricanes. I'm sorry, the Hurricanes.
Yeah, Bryce Young has 3 goals tonight.
Yeah.
Is there a game even on?
They scored more points tonight than the Panthers did in 10 games. So.
I do think I do want to say this. This is a division, and you guys touched on it just a couple minutes ago, Eric. You were speaking on it. This is a division that, for the first time in history, where all 4 teams had a winning record. This is a very good division, and when you play in a division like this, you have to continually build your roster. And I will say this: this is not a homer. This is not the homer side of me, but I feel like I just feel like the other teams in our division did not help their rosters or do anything to help build for the future of their teams, except for maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers. If these offensive line guys hit, obviously they've done a good job of rebuilding that offensive line. But and I agree with you, Justin. The Bengals, I gave them a B plus. It could be an A, no doubt. It's a boomer bust draft for the Bengals. A lot of guys that if they hit, it's going to be one of the best drafts in a recent decade for the Bengals. But you never know. I mean, you never know how it's going to pan out. It's going to be interesting how this division looks come September.
Didn't CJ Stroud do an interview not too long ago? He was talking about the AFC North, and he was pretty adamant it was the best division in football. I mean, he didn't even.
Right.
He did. Yep.
Yeah, I think somebody said
it was Micah Parsons.
And somebody said it was the NFC. Somebody was saying it was the NFC East. They were trying to make that argument, or the NFC West. I can't remember which one.
It was Micah Parsons from the Cowboys. I guess they have a podcast.
Yeah, Parsons has a podcast. Yep.
Yeah, with Stroud. Gotcha. And Stroud told him, he goes, every team in the AFC. He said the AFC North. It wasn't even close to him.
Yeah, he didn't even. He was like, no, it's the AFC North. That's it.
On last week's episode, I said this when Warren Sharp tweeted that. The Bengals' schedule, how difficult it was last year, 14 teams with winning records, and they won 9 games. I don't want to use injuries as an excuse, but I guess I am here. When you lose your star quarterback and your star defensive player for a majority of the season, and you still find a way to win 9 games, the Bengals have a pretty good roster. And I think this draft made that pretty good roster better. And, Von Bell coming back to help, be the glue of that secondary. I think the Bengals could get 2 or 3 more wins. I really do. Not being a homer, I'm being a realist. I could see that. I think it's going to happen. I'm very optimistic about this season. I really am. Joe looks good. He's put on about 10 pounds of muscle. Yoshi Voss has put on muscle. Everybody seems to be really taking the offseason seriously. It's going to be a good year, guys.
Yeah. How about T tweeting out he's ready to go win a championship? I mean, again, this was a guy that all the pundits were writing off ever playing in a Bengal uniform again. And, he's tweeting that he's ready to go win a championship with his team. I agree, Mon. This team is, and you again, they won 9 games. And Joe Burrow was healthy for how many of those games? maybe 4, maybe 5 games last year Joe Burrow was healthy in.
Yeah, and I'm going to be a homer. I'm going to be the optimist that I always am, and we added the pieces we needed in the draft. Yes, they may be risky. They're all going to hit. If Joe Burrow is healthy, and Joe Burrow is going to be healthy, we're all lighting all of our candles and doing what we got to do so that Joe's healthy. I don't see where we don't get 15 wins easily. And to Kinsey's point here, that what we know of the schedule so far, the Ravens kick it off against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are going to win that. The Browns kick it off against the Cowboys. You know, we win week 1 if it's where the rumor is supposed to be against the Patriots. You know, we come out of week 1 at worst tied with the Steelers. Hopefully the Steelers face off against the Eagles or somebody really tough. And then we come out of there and we're already leading the division. Before we get out of here, because we're already an hour and 10 in, I'm going to read off the home opponents, and we'll go around the table, and you guys tell me which game you'd like to see in prime time and maybe what month. You don't have to get specific, but pick a prime time game that you really want to see the Bengals play, just a home game. We got the opponents that we play at home this year: the Broncos, the Browns, the Commanders, the Eagles, the Patriots, the Raiders, the Ravens, and the Steelers. And I'm just going to call it right now. I think everybody's should be or should look and want to play the Raiders in prime time to relive that first breaking the curse game. I'd like to see that played in maybe October and Sunday night, maybe even that Black Friday game. What do you got, Mon?
You know what? Animal just mentioned it in the message there. I think it's going to be the Eagles. I think the Eagles will be a primetime game. But the game that I want to see the Ravens at Paycor in prime time, preferably in December. Okay, because the it's going to be rabid there. It's hard to play at Paycor, and I think the Bengals start that game 3-0. 2 years ago, when we had 3 road games in the AFC North, I was stressed about that because I'm telling you, the hard to win those games, and we didn't. If I'm not mistaken, I think we lost all those games. It's hard to win on the road at 1:00 in your division, especially at 8:00 at night, national TV. Come on, man, that's not setting up your team to succeed. The NFL better give us some games at Paycor primetime against the AFC North.
What do you got, Justin? What would you like?
Yeah, I want to see us take on the Raiders prime time, and I hope someone busts Brock Bowers' hip just like Bo Jackson's, man.
We are redeemed in Athens. Oh Lord, what do you got, Jake?
Okay, no, scratch Athens from the Bengals Pulse. We've been banned,
and Las Vegas now too. Jake, what do you got?
I'm gonna say I actually am gonna agree with Mon. I think the Eagles is definitely gonna be a primetime game. But man, oh man, I would love to see the Ravens Bengals in prime time in Paycor. I mean, for once, NFL, give the Bengals some prime time home games in their division. I think that's where the NFL has really fumbled the ball when it comes to the Bengals schedule, is making these guys play primetime games on the road in the division. It's about time that we get some home primetime games. And I agree with Mon. I think the Ravens are not winning in Paycor in prime time. There's no way that's happening. So give me the Ravens and the Bengals in prime time. And if that Patriots thing is true, I will be so happy, because the Bengals have started 5 out of the last 7 years 0-1, and we need to start fast this year.
I agree.
Sure. I on that Ravens note, let's make it Sunday night. I'm tired of playing the Ravens on Thursday. Let's get a Sunday night football game in Paycor. Let's get
that. Saskatchewan on Thursday.
All right, guys, we're over an hour in, so just want to say thank you for everybody that's joined us tonight. We wanted to get our final thoughts out there and touch on everything we can. Make sure you like and subscribe and give us a follow on X. You can find Mon at the Firemon. Jake is at Coach Jake Owens 9. I'm eFlash with 2 H's and 2 8's. Also follow the Cincinnati Pod and Bengals Pulse Bengals _Pulse 9, and of course Justin L. Wells. Reminds me of a time traveler or something there, Justin.
Yeah.
Buy the T-shirts. Buy T-shirts.
Yep. You got, other than buy the discount code for the T-shirts will be going until the end of the week. Thanks to those who've purchased them. If you, we'll put that up on the screen here real quick before we drop off. But Mon has tweeted out as well. But appreciate everybody that supported. Any last thoughts, guys, before we get out of here? Justin first.
You should see my DeLorean outside. No,
Is that the pickup line you use?
yeah. See my flux.
Was Arnold ever in a time? Arnold Schwarzenegger ever in a time travel movie?
What? No, mute Jake right now.
So no,
it would be excellent.
of course it would. So real quick, so I was looking at positions that I think coming out of the draft for AFC North, still question marks. For the Steelers, I think Jake made a good point about the skill position, particularly receiver. It'll be interesting to see how that group develops for them. I think for the Ravens, it's going to be the offensive line, particularly left guard. So like Mon said, a lot of turnover for him there. How does that play out for the Ravens in 2024? I think for the Browns, it's going to be the lack of depth on the defensive line. They're really going to need some of these young guys step up, particularly Mike Hall in 2024. Because we can tell you about that here in the last year or two. If you don't have 6, 7, 8 defensive linemen that you can depend on, when those injuries start piling up toward the later parts of the season, that can get a little iffy. So that'll be interesting to watch for them. So
We'll monitor
excited about.
We'll monitor.
Yeah. So that's kind of my final thoughts on the draft in the AFC North.
Jake, you got final thoughts?
Yeah,
final thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Wednesday is a big day for the Bengals because this is a team again that has last year, especially, Mon said it. I mean, this is a team that has had a brutal run of scheduling when it comes to having to go on the road in the division, primetime games. Last year, obviously playing 14 teams with double-digit wins. This is Wednesday is a chance. The Bengals are not rarely going to get a lot anymore as long as Joe Burrow is healthy, and that is playing a last place schedule. Wednesday is a big day for this Bengals season, and hopefully the NFL does them right and lets them play a couple of those primetime games at home, especially the divisional games. But I'm interested to see what Wednesday looks like for this team because it really could help this team start off fast, which we know, guys, has not happened in a very long time.
Yeah, I've talked to Goodell, and I'm trying to get Northeast Louisiana as the opener for.
I got to let our listeners know that it's raining so hard in my town right now. It hasn't rained here in the month, and I'm just grateful for the rain. I know we're talking football, but just want to share that.
Listen, I'm 10 minutes down the road and it's dry out here, Mon. So you must have a cloud over your head.
But it's pouring here. Thank God my grass needs it. But great show, guys.
Yeah,
freaking sure. DJ Thomas over there.
All right, everybody. We'll be back next Monday or next Wednesday to talk about the schedule that's come out. We're probably going to throw some polls out there. We got to hear how we graded these drafts, but I think Mon will throw some polls out there to see what you guys grade these drafts. So we'll get that out there. Give us your comments. Comment on the YouTube video. Share it with your friends. We appreciate it. Once again, thanks for joining us tonight. Happy 513 day. Get out there, get your skyline before it's 12 o'clock, and we'll see you next week. Who day,
everybody.
See ya.